Today's episode of the Bill Simmons Podcast on the Ringer Podcast Network is brought to you by SeatGeek. That is our presenting sponsor. Buy and sell tickets in 2 taps on your phone. Everything fully guaranteed. NBA fans, $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase on NBA tickets. All you have to do is use promo code BSNBA. Download the SeatGeek app or go right to SeatGeek.com. We are also brought to you by Bluehost, a top-rated website provider powering over 2 million websites for bloggers and small business owners. Design your personal or small business website your way without being limited by templates. Simple enough for beginners, powerful enough for even the most advanced users. Right now, our listeners save 50%. Whoa, 50% when you sign up at bluehost.com/Bill Simmons. Again, that's bluehost.com/Bill Simmons. Finally, please subscribe to the Ringer NFL show or download it, because I went on there yesterday with Tate Frazier and Mike Lombardi to talk about the very controversial Patriots trade of Jimmy Garoppolo. We talked about conspiracy theories. We got Lombardi to try to admit that he was wrong about the Eagles. He is standing pat. We talked about trade deadline, all kinds of good stuff. It's a really good podcast, so listen to that one on the Ringer NFL show. If you want to hear me talk about the Patriots, coming up, we're going to talk to one of the smartest people in the publishing industry, Janice Mann. But first, Pearl Jam. This is exciting. We've done a couple Smart Guy Wednesdays. I've been dying to do a Smart Gal Wednesday. Janice Mann.
Hi.
One of the smartest. What's your title now? I don't even know how to describe it.
Okay, so I was running the Hollywood Reporter for a long time, and now I work for the parent company, the owner, which also, my owner also owns the Dodgers. So today is a good day.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So
I bet you can get decent seats.
I'm going tonight. It's one of the perks. Going tonight to Game 7. So my title is I'm a strategist with Eldridge Industries. Strategist, which sounds very strategic, right?
That's
sounds
exciting.
Ominous.
But you're also running Billboard, though, too, right?
I was running Billboard. So I did Hollywood Reporter and Billboard, and both of them required some renovation work to be brought up to speed. So that was the job I had for 7 years.
So you take over Us Weekly like 2002?
Yes.
Us Weekly, which I grew up with, was always like the ugly stepbrother of People Magazine. People Magazine was like the awesome magazine.
Right.
Us Weekly was like kind of the stepbrother that came with it. Yeah.
Yes.
It moved in like later, and it smokes in the backyard, and kind of stay away from it. It's got some pictures.
Yes.
And then over that decade, it became one of the great reads.
Right.
I was judged by magazines by reads, which is why I like the Hollywood Reporter. Mm-hmm. You've been involved in 2 of my favorite magazines, which is why I wanted to have you on. But I like to get like 30 minutes out of my magazine.
Totally.
And so many of them aren't like that anymore. Us Weekly in its heyday, it was like, man, I got 35 minutes here with this Us Weekly.
Yeah, it was
I'm ripping through it.
I think the thing that was so fun about Us Weekly at the time, I mean, it was just like spot on in the zeitgeist, right? And I think with like
But it wasn't in 2002.
No, it wasn't. And so it became
So what happened?
Let's see.
So you go in and you say, how do we be different from People Magazine?
Yes.
How do we stand out? And there's a void here. So how did you see the void?
So this is the void I saw. It was, so I had worked at People, and it was always, even when I worked there in my early 20s, and even when I was there, it was like, oh God, I'm never going to read this. It was just it always felt like something your mother would read.
It was a lot of like children falling into wells.
Yes, and really earnest, and I hate Ernest. Ernest is one of my least favorite
But then like
things.
the 50 best looking celebrities, that would be an issue.
Yes.
They would kind of straddle both worlds.
They tried, right?
There's a lot of Americana.
Yes, and it's very broad and hugely successful. So I'm not demeaning anything that they've done.
It's
just
still
wasn't
working.
my thing, right?
Yeah.
And like even to this day, I would still think of it as a magazine my mom reads, even though I'm now like the mom in the demographic of that publication. But at Us Weekly, like you could just sort of see the tide shifting, and you could see this relationship with celebrity completely changing. Where, I think the 90s were built on this whole idea of access journalism for publications, and models don't go on magazines anymore, celebrities do. So this whole competition to get celebrities on covers, and some of them being forced down by Harvey Weinstein, but whatever.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that later.
About him later.
But the and so then this access journalism, as I think people in media now know, there are so many compromises with that, right? That oh my God, can you not mention the DUI? Can you let's not talk about the divorce. And it becomes, so all the sort of rough
She'll
edges.
do the photo shoot,
Yes.
but you can't mention
Yes.
that she broke up that guy's marriage.
Right. So
Leave that out.
Totally. So all the rough edges get sanded off.
Yeah.
And so then, you get this sort of picture perfect, Julia Roberts served up to you, from your interview in the lobby of the Beverly Hills Hotel, where it's amazing. She doesn't eat. She eats a hamburger, but she's so thin and beautiful.
I know. How does she do that?
Yeah, how does she do
She
it?
had 2 cheeseburgers.
Yeah. And she's not wearing makeup, but she's so beautiful.
She's so naturally pretty. Yeah.
So that kind of journalism, I felt like in the world of publishing, really dominated in the 90s. And so,
But hold on though.
Right.
That changed near the end of the decade, because the early part of the decade, there was good stuff going on. Like Vanity Fair was having a resurgence.
Yes.
Spy was still there for the
Yes.
first part of the decade.
Yes.
Entertainment Weekly was
Right. Okay.
really good. Premiere was good.
I agree.
But then it shifted, and I never understood why it shifted.
I think it shifted. I think the access game got hard, and I also think that this is not blaming anyone, but I think that editors get co-opted too. I think that it's hard to stay the course when all these powerful, famous people they want to befriend you, whatever their motivations are. They want, and this is again going back to Weinstein, which we'll talk about. They want to maybe give you money. They want to option your stories. And
Invite you to parties and dinners that you couldn't have gone to 5 years ago.
I think it's very, very hard. I think I'm Kim Masters, who's one of the writers of the Hollywood Reporter, who you couldn't corrupt, even if you
Right.
put like $5 million in front of her. She always said like there's almost no editor who hasn't been corrupted, and that she's someone who will tell you tales often about her stories when she worked at various publications, Vanity Fair, Premiere Time, that got killed or were sort of softened and managed into non-existence. She did have a funny story, and I'll get back to what we were talking about. She told me this funny story, and I think she wrote about it once for us when she did a story about Michael Ovitz throwing a fit. I can't remember at which restaurant in LA at the time, and it was the Thing, and he was at the top of his power. And Rupert Murdoch owned Premiere at the time, and so Ovitz knows this story. This item is coming about him throwing a fit, one of these little gossip items, and he calls Susan Lyne, who was then the editor of Premiere, and Susan Lyne went on to run ABC Entertainment and Gilt Group and a bunch of other stuff. And so he's trying to get Susan Lyne enraged. And so anyway, it becomes this whole behind the scenes drama, as these stories often do, over, Michael Ovitz complaining about where he's sitting in a restaurant. And so then Susan Lyne calls Rupert Murdoch and just says, and then Ovitz is threatening to call Rupert Murdoch. And so Susan Lyne calls Rupert and reads the item to him. And Rupert said, "Wait, can you read it to me again? Because it's so hilarious. I have to know how I can retell it to my friends." And that was it. And
Wow.
so he's one of those people. I mean, so maybe he's obviously, Fox News is a whole other situation, and that can be used as an exception.
Right.
But, he's one of those people who I think has let his journalists, do what they need to do. But so the access game, yes, it changed things. And then also the culture of celebrity was changing. I always say it's no coincidence that reality TV and Us Weekly rose at the same time. And it was a sort of, breaking through of what we considered celebrity, and also this idea, and you can think of it as a precursor to social media now, this intimacy that celebrity is just within anyone's grasp, right? And so it's this familiarity that younger people were beginning to feel, that you could call Britney Spears is not Britney, and as an Us Weekly former reader, you would know she's Britney. She's one name. She's Christina Aguilera is Christina, and this idea that they were somehow these young celebrities were part of a young person's own social world, and this intimacy that you felt, and also. And then you saw these celebrities also participating in that the whole breaking through into stardom wasn't just about the glossy photo shoot, but also doling out your personal stories in a way that got you more attention. So it was a sense of that, being able to, package those people in a way that made them interesting to a young audience, and also to get people excited about them. Right. And,
I always felt like the 90s were, there's a separation between fans and celebrities, right?
Yes.
So like, for example, the Pam Anderson sex tape comes out in 1996, pre-internet.
Right.
This was like this massive moment for guys in their 20s.
Right.
Like, Pam Anderson's having sex on tape? Like,
Right.
what? This is incredible. And now 20 years later, people would be like,
you might not even click on it, right?
And it's been this gradual push in 20 years. And I think what you mentioned with like that beginning of the 2000s, because I was working at Jimmy's show at the beginning of that. And it was right when the reality craze was starting.
Right.
So it started with Survivor in 2000, but then it started to go and The Bachelor and all these shows. But then all of a sudden I remember like Whitney and Bobby had a show.
Right.
Remember that? All of a sudden these people were on TV and they were like famous celebrities.
Right. Right.
It's like, you have a reality show?
Right.
And it just seemed like we started moving closer to the celebs. And now into that comes Us Weekly.
Yes, right.
With the pictures, and stars are just like us.
Stars
Look, there's Ben Affleck getting coffee.
I mean,
he's just like, he's taking his garbage. He's just like me.
Who knew he had garbage,
I had no idea Ben Affleck had garbage.
And I can't tell you the number of times people still use that phrase today, right? The stars, it just encapsulates.
It's genius.
It's like, it was.
Well, and also like, you must have started Stars Like Us, right?
No, my
or was that in
predecessor,
there?
Bonnie Fuller, did.
All right, so
I was her deputy at the time, but she started it.
Fashion Police was from the 90s, right?
Yes. No, yes. And it was not funny. And then it became funny.
Became super funny.
Yes. And people were like, it was, I thought, a real breakthrough moment. There were several breakthrough moments there where I thought this was moving the needle ahead for us, when we would have big names come to us wanting to do it. Right. And
what about big names getting mad that they were in the Fashion Police? You must have had that all the time, right?
Yeah, not really. I think it's like, it's one of those things. And this is the shift of that decade is any attention better than no attention? And usually the answer is probably
print the name right.
Right. It's probably yes. Right. I think that you think about. I always say this about celebrity in Hollywood. Like, it's like being elected to political office. You have to, the second you're in, the second you have that hit show or a movie, you are trying really hard to. You're thinking about your midterm election and maybe, 2020, like, you have to keep that alive and going. And how do you stay front of mind? How do you have people care about you? I mean, all their anxieties, and you see this again in all the Weinstein stuff, all their anxieties. It's so, there is so much fear around all of that your last job was your last job. And so Us Weekly and that whole machinery around that sort of fed into the front of mind.
Well, you also had two magical stories for Us Weekly. Probably the two best of all time.
What I hear
Affleck and J-Lo.
Magical.
Magical. I mean, how many covers and stories was that?
Mean,
like 6, 9, 12, 15 months? I don't even know.
At least. And that was
and he's kind of fallen apart behind the scenes a little bit.
Yes.
So you get those pictures of, I remember I don't even think she was my wife yet, but my future wife was like, I'm worried about Affleck. It's Us Weekly photo. He just looks like he's in bad shape. Are you sure he's all right? I'm like, I don't know. He's getting coffee. But that was number one. And then obviously the mother load.
Brad, Jed, and Angelina.
I mean, that'll never be it could be a 7-hour documentary. It'll never be replicated.
Completely. And we still, I mean, you could not have, you couldn't have, no script writer, no writer's room in town could have made those up.
It's the greatest Hollywood celebrity story probably of all time.
The greatest.
The biggest temptress in Hollywood.
Right.
At the peak of her powers.
Yes.
Demolishes the world's best celebrity couple.
Yes.
On a movie set.
Uh-huh.
Everyone's at the peak of their powers.
Yes.
It's unbelievable.
And then do you remember how then Brad and Angelina did that W photo shoot?
Oh,
where,
yeah.
Like, you just like salt in the wound. And I mean, it was really.
And plus rumors of it for months and months and months. So you already had the seeds of that.
That was quite a saga. And I think.
So that like triple your business?
I mean, it just kept, yes. I mean, like the reverberations of those stories were just huge, right? People like, it was like the crack cocaine of that decade, right? You just had to, you had to have more and more.
Everyone took sides.
Yeah.
There was Angelina sides, which I never understood.
Well, the bad girls.
Well, yeah, well, you can't judge love. I mean, if they love each other, there's that.
Or
I was
the
like,
whole,
what?
like, a woman can't break up a marriage, a man does it too. Like that argument. But when you think about it, think how much celebrity has changed since then. What celebrity story would ever have that scale and scope today?
There's nothing. Nothing
right?
can happen.
Nothing. And, remember when Britney Spears was melting down and shaving her head and, everybody is there. And
that was a good one.
And I always like to tell this anecdote of when she was shaving her head in the salon. and we sent a reporter over. We were second there. The first outlet there was CNN with the camera crew. And that was sort of how much that celebrity stuff had become part of the national conversation. And now, like, I mean, no one can do, it's so hard for anyone to care about anything a celebrity does. Like, try to get attention. It's, you know, you could have, you know, I don't know who's even a big, you know, Chris Pratt could walk naked across the street and
can't do it.
Like, you know,
but that's what's eroded over the last 20 years.
Right.
There's no distance anymore.
There's no distance.
The Brad Angelina Aniston, there was distance.
I mean, they were like the gods of Hollywood, right? It's like, it was, I mean,
biggest TV show, probably the biggest male movie star.
Right.
And the best looking actress on the planet, who also seemed like she was going to win like 5 or 6 Oscars.
Totally. It was like Zeus, Hera, and, you know, Aphrodite were all duking it out. And we
How's this not been a movie yet, by the way?
I don't know.
I would totally go, if it was done the right way, I would totally go see the Brangelina.
Yeah. But I would also watch the Lifetime movie version of that too. It'd be kind of funny, right?
It's probably happened. Probably with a lot of bad actors. So, and then in 2006,
right.
Well, first you had Paris Hilton.
Oh my God.
That was more catnip.
Yeah. And you know what? Paris was, she's the one that has not sort of stood the test of time, right?
She was too early.
She was too early.
She missed social media.
Right. And now it's weird. Paris Hilton's now maybe like the weird older lady, right? How did how did that happen?
She taught the Kardashians all her tricks, and then they took it and made it this 9-figure business.
I mean, do you remember that photograph of Kim Kardashian like following behind her like a puppy?
Studying. Studying the teacher, the tutor.
Yes, some of her only schooling probably, but yeah, she mastered that, right? And then just like kneecapped her and like, you know, I'll take this, and that was it. I mean,
there was this whole time when the celebrities really, really needed Us Weekly. That has shifted because, I mean, this is inside baseball for Los Angeles, but you go to Robertson Boulevard now, and I would say 40% of the stores are empty. And back in the day, Robertson Boulevard was the hottest place that had all the stores and all the celebrities walking up and down hoping to get inadvertently photographed because it would end up in Us Weekly. Yeah. Oh, look, there's Paris Hilton happens to be coming out of the Ivy.
Right.
With 7 photographers waiting for her.
Right. Wearing an engagement ring. Is she engaged?
Yeah. What's she doing?
Yeah, let's turn that into a news cycle.
Who's that guy she's with?
Right. And so there was something almost so like Truman Show, like meta orchestrated about it at times. And I'm sure you remember, you know, Heidi and Spencer.
Right. That's kind of when the wheels started to come off. When the people who weren't quite big enough celebrities were trying to orchestrate it.
Yes. And that was, you could sort of you really began to kind of have a bad taste in your mouth about where this was all headed. And
Jersey Shore finally killed it.
Yeah.
Completely.
I think Jersey Shore that might have been the true jump the shark moment. Though I would argue Real Housewives. I would argue, you know, we did a lot of Apprentice coverage too. And that's when you really felt like you're, you know, in the dregs of whatever Hollywood is and and, you know, to this day, people, you know, are trying to define what Hollywood is and who are the actual stars. But that's where it really felt like it was, you know, that sort of magical, you know, podium that you put certain celebrities on was like, not really
didn't exist.
It didn't exist.
You'd put photos of the celebrities reading the Us Weekly, which I was like
ridiculous.
Because you know they were all reading it. They're all pretending they don't care, but they're all reading it in the hair salon or something.
The greatest moment, the greatest sort of meta moment of the Affleck J-Lo relationship was they were driving. Okay, they went to a McDonald's drive-in in a pink Bentley convertible, as one does, right? And so I think she had her big pink diamond engagement ring at the time, and so they know they're getting followed, and they know they're getting photographed, and they deliberately like are reading Us Weekly like practically
holding it
like over their
covers.
faces. Yeah, so I mean, it's like, I mean, it was sort of this ingenious J-Lo moment. I would say she to this day is one of the pros in how to manage an image.
Yeah, give me the Mount Rushmore. Who are the best? Who are the ones you admired from afar? J-Lo's got to be in there,
Yeah,
right?
I would say I put J-Lo on Mount Rushmore, Angelina Jolie,
Master. She broke up somebody's marriage and somehow nobody thought of her as a villain.
Yeah, is a saint.
Yeah.
So today is a saint. And she has done great things.
She's incredible how she pulled that off.
Incredible. Okay, God, the Mount Rushmore. I mean, Paris filed her application to be a Mount Rushmore but failed. Was not admitted.
Yeah, she seemed like almost a lock in 2006.
Right.
So what killed her was the terrible reality show she did. It made her seem less cool for some reason.
Yeah, but
she just was exposed as there just wasn't anything on the top shelf.
There's nothing there. But I also think she was exposed to the point that we try to genuinely like our celebrities. We want to, and she was exposed as sort of a very not nice person, right? And I think that I think there was a whole. Before everyone had an N-word incident, she had her N-word incident.
True. She was early on the N-word incidents.
An early adapter, you would call her. And just vicious to her friends and, things that, of course, sound so silly to talk about today. But, Yeah, the Kardashians are much better at convincing me that they're real, relatable people, which I think is part of the charm of that show, which anytime my wife is watching it, she doesn't watch it that often, but I always I'll watch 15 minutes and go, Kim seems like a nice person. And then you go, oh, no, there's 19 cameras on her. There's no way to know. But I think, the enduring theme of the Kardashians that works so well is it's essentially a family show. It's
and they all look out for each other and they remind people of their own weird families.
And even, a couple of weeks ago, there were the pictures of Kanye, fat Kanye, who looks like he put on some weight, right? Yep. And I thought, and I was just reading the commentary around that, and it was so different than, we do evolve as human beings, right? People
the whole fat shaming thing that came out of it. Yeah.
And then but also people were saying Kanye clearly has had some mental health struggles. Some mental health medication can make you put on weight. And there was this whole level of kind of understanding around it, which it was so unusual. But
the mid 2000s didn't have that kind of understanding.
Did not happen. And then but to underscore sort of the some of the reasons why the Kardashians persist, it made me think Kim standing by a probably at times profoundly mentally ill husband, right? And so there are things that I think that they've been able to, and not always contrivance, that they've been able to demonstrate themes that people relate to that kind of reveal a goodness that makes people like them. Right. Whatever. Forget the Pepsi ad and they do, butt selfies or whatever they do. That's almost like a generational cultural thing. That a lot of people aren't going to butt selfies. Right. So,
I do think social media kind of killed Us Weekly. Not that Us Weekly's dead, but there's no question the accessibility of Instagram and Twitter and being able to just get pictures whenever you want from any celebrity you like versus relying on Us Weekly.
Well, Just Like Us, I'll show you my Just Like Us. I'm not going to rely on a third party to do that for me.
You could see last night, all these celebrities now, they tweet Halloween pictures of themselves and their kids. Right. The NBA players are even doing the NBA players have all learned from the real celebrities, and now they've cultivated their own celebrity. Right. And 10 years ago, that's a whole Us Weekly section of Halloween pictures. There were even a photo editor
calling around trying to get photos of Halloween costumes, right? And so, it killed it. So what is? I think when you think about printed publications anymore and why they even exist, there is. And even to some degree, why editors I always wonder if how much people actually care about or know about editors. But that whole idea that there was this, at one point, an 80-page thing that people got every week, and they would sit there and enjoy whatever that creation was because it was very heavily curated, right?
Yeah.
Can that experience still exist? Is it actually more valuable in the internet economy where it's just this fire hose of 90% garbage all day, right? And so
or do people read more because they're always reading their iPhone, their iPad?
Right. I mean,
they're constantly going through stuff. I don't read as much as I used to.
You don't?
No.
Yeah.
Because I always feel like I'm always reading.
Right.
I'm always reading the internet.
Right. You're always reading like 300 words at a time. Right?
It wasn't like, hey, I'll grab a magazine and kick back for a half hour. I do that less than I used to.
Right. Not even on a plane anymore. Right. Like
no.
I think
I'll read my iPad. I'll go hook up to the terrible go-go Wi-Fi and it'll log off 40 times on me. I'll be half reading a story. It'll stop.
And the flight attendant will tell you she's resetting it.
Oh, yeah. No. Are you sure it's not your iPad? No, I know it's not my iPad. Nobody's on their iPad right now. No, but I think, I don't think a magazine will resonate like that anymore. I think an internet site could. I don't think a magazine could.
Right. It's just it almost seems, and it makes, of course I feel slightly sad about that. There's definitely like it's like a passing of time, right? It's like, how long do we hold on to that 8-track player? Oh, that's kind of cool. And then you see, with like the turntables, there's maybe a slight resurgence of vinyl. There's a coolness to that and so maybe in 5 years, I mean, it's all happened so quickly. Maybe in 5 years it comes to that. But, the economics of Us Weekly at the time, you think about the state of publishing today.
Lucrative.
Oh my God, it was so insane. Like and so you realize why then all these imitation weeklies came along. Also, so it was. I
love how you said that derisively because that's also how I felt.
Yeah, right.
Star Magazine would suck me in every once in a while because they would have good covers sometimes.
Because it was so. Like,
the other ones are like really.
But I think with Star sometimes, and even with like Inquirer today, even though like all the Trump, Melania stuff is so crazy that they do the pro stuff, but but if you like sometimes with like those Star Inquirer titles, it's like if you're gonna go there, and it's and it's so preposterously funny, right?
Yeah.
And,
because the crazier they get, then you get into like Brad Pitt considering a sex change. Like, come on, no, he's not.
Wait, but let me just.
Look at one thing. Like aliens found in Brad Pitt's house.
Right.
So how much? What was the most you ever paid for a photograph when you were at Us Weekly?
I mean, I think they were probably. I'm sure everyone remembers where they were, when they saw the Brad Angelina photos together in Kenya on the beach. And when it was like
they thought they were so safe in Kenya.
Yeah. and it was the confirmation they were together. And and so I believe the price Us Weekly paid, and I always had to go to Jan Wenner, who was the owner of Us Weekly.
I wanted to talk about him.
Oh, we can talk about Jan. And so, Jan had to say, okay. And so we bought them and they were $500,000.
Oh, and you made that money back in like 3 hours.
And the funny thing about those photos
So wait, some Kenyan dude was just walking the beach?
Okay, see, this is why nothing is ever as it seems.
Okay.
We were pretty sure that if you're trying to have your first public outing as a couple and all the scandal is swirling around you, like that might be one of the ways you set it up, right?
Ooh.
You might want to do it with kids in tow, right?
Yeah.
I think they had.
That's how I would do it.
Yes,
lots of kids.
Right, adopted children.
We've taken a whole first grade class out of fatherless orphans, and wait, there's a photographer here.
Exactly. So there some might suspect that there was some arrangement made where it's not like there was a whole paparazzi agency that just happened to be on a boat in off the African coast ready to go.
Doubtful.
So doubtful, but. We don't know that for sure, but anyway, that is how some of the sausage gets made, right? How you sort of, and like, it wasn't like they had to tell the world somehow and come out at some point, and that was one way to do it.
So did you always have to get permission from Jan Wenner or just for the biggies? Like anything over 50 grand, you had to at least send him an email?
Yeah, I mean, Jan wanted to be involved and at times wasn't involved at all, but for, Jan is, when you work for these people, when you work for someone who's a single owner, right? And I mean, he owned it with his wife, Jane.
Yeah.
But this is money.
Big winner in the book, Jane. I'm like 130 pages in. She's been the big winner so far. I haven't gotten all the crazy stuff yet.
Well, Jane, Jane sounds kind of awesome with 130 pages in, right?
Okay, I'm just saying, 130 pages in, she's been a winner.
Yeah, she's they describe her as sort of unbelievably beautiful, right? And
stunning,
like and kind of
enchanting,
more cultured than Jan.
Yeah, such a catch.
But when you work for single owners like that, and he's not running a Time Inc. or it's like a conglomerate. It's like money in, money out of your pocket. It's all, so it's all, and Jan counted his pennies as he should. That's his business. So yes. So that.
But you had the irony though of, he makes his fortune and fame and everything off Rolling Stone, which in the 70s was the magazine.
Right.
And then in the 80s, still doing really well, starting to fade a little, 90s. And by the 2000s had lost some of its relevance. And all of a sudden, Us Weekly, which he also owns and is over here, has suddenly eclipsed everything else he owns
completely
and becomes this giant entity for him.
And it was,
that must have been weird for him.
I think it was really weird for him. Jan likes money, right? And I think when you look at the balance sheet of what's supporting what in that organization, the power became pretty clear. Not that Us Weekly ever dominated Rolling Stone in his mind, but I would say created equal mind share. And one of the things that Jan, if you worked at Rolling Stone at the time, it is all Jan. And there was always this moment in the office when Jan was coming back from Sun Valley where he would go skiing and he'd take his private plane and go skiing, and he had to go for various durations of time, and he would come back.
It's hard to believe he lost touch with pop culture a little bit when he was doing stuff like that. I mean, who would have thought?
Shocking.
Who would have thought?
And so, and then people would say, "Oh shit, Jan's coming back today," and it meant that Rolling Stone was about to get torn up. That story you were working on for 3 months.
Pink Floyd's going on the cover.
Right, exactly. Bye bye. Right. You totally like Bob Dylan again.
Mick Jagger's doing something.
Totally. And so that was like all his, like that was his. His super ego, like every aspect of Jan was projected onto Rolling Stone, and Us Weekly,
for better and worse.
Yes, exactly.
Guy's a genius,
yes.
I think it's really tough to run a magazine like that once you hit a certain age, because unless you're around young people all the time,
right?
This is one thing I found at Grantland and the Ringer too. Is like young people know where stuff's going. If you're not around young people, then you're going to think like the Pink Floyd cover is a good idea.
Right.
And it's not.
Well, I think it's also, Jan and I got along incredibly well, which I don't think has always been the case with his editors.
That's very generous.
Yes. But I think he also he did not, and maybe he had a different relationship with males at the top. It is a belief that all the males around him had to, acquiesce to his opinion and desire. So that becomes hard too. I'm sure you want people in this room to tell you're wrong and like to talk about it, right?
No, I don't like when anyone tells me I'm wrong. No, you have to. You have to. If people around you can't tell you something's a bad idea, then
we would always have this
in bad shape.
There was a repetitive conversation Jan and I would have about Us Weekly, where he would say, so remember, this is mid 2005, 6. And so he would say, you know what I really think Us Weekly needs? You need to show more pictures of Michael Douglas, Danny DeVito, and Robin Williams. And then I would say, okay. And then,
just not do it.
Yes. But then it would come up again.
Yeah.
And occasionally then maybe some people remember there was occasionally a picture of Danny DeVito, or like you would sort of, dole it out, just
taking out the garbage.
Yeah. Yes. And then you would sort of buy some time around that conversation. But I think for Jan, he really relished that moment in time when he was at the epicenter of pop culture, and he kind of became
a tastemaker.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the amazing things that Joe Hagan's book, Sticky Fingers, says is he said from 1971 to 1977, Jan was the most powerful editor in America.
Yep.
And, you think about that now, and I bet
that's a long time too.
It's a very long
7
time.
years is.
Yep. And I bet half your staff might not even know who Jan is today, right? I mean,
or they might know him from his 3-second Almost Famous cameo.
Right.
In the limo. I love when Cameron Crowe would just throw Jan Wenner in his movies.
Right.
He's in Jerry Maguire.
Yes.
He never has a line. He's just always kind of lurking for 3 seconds.
Or John Travolta, Perfect. Do you remember?
Right.
He was,
another one.
Yeah.
Oh, he had lines in Perfect, though.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is a terrible movie.
So I think there are certain people who get stuck, and not through any fault of anyone's, but in the contemporary past where they felt most sort of at home, right?
Well, the biggest issue magazines, Sports Illustrated had the same thing, where people trying to protect the way it worked in the past because that was the model that worked for them, instead of being like, we got to move.
Yep.
They're no, we got to keep it this way. And that's when you really get in trouble. And
Well,
it's the story of every failed media venture, basically.
To think that the past defines who you are is, and I think
ESPN's in that spot right now.
Completely.
Trying to keep Sports Center and all these things that worked, and it's, you got to move forward.
Right. And I think they don't know what the way forward is. And I'm not sure a ton of people do.
There may not be a way forward.
But I mean, I could tell you, like, the Jameel Hill thing is probably not the way forward. It's like,
no.
To me, and just, I'm not a huge sports person. I don't watch sports religiously. And just as an outsider who sort of sees how it's being represented, that was like, what the fuck is that? Like, oh my God, you just, like, what are you doing to this woman? Like, and like, the sports people shouldn't have opinions. They should just have opinions about things, balls being moved around. And
these were all conversations I used to have with them when I worked there. Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's like, we can be human beings too. It's not, it doesn't reflect on ESPN.
It's weird. It's also so anathema to, I feel like, what people want today, which is they want a feeling of authenticity from personalities, right?
That's why I wrote about Jamel 3 weeks ago, and that was my point. Is the authenticity is more important than it's ever been.
Right.
And if you're asking people that work for you and represent you not to be authentic, you're in rough shape.
But also, like, I mean, forget all of that. The optics of it. It was
the
wrong,
optics.
but like, oh my God, you have an African-American female sports.
Right. This is why you're paying her.
Oh my God. Like, what? Like, don't do it to her.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're going to get
we need
slaughtered. Her. Yeah. And like, and also, like, was she really wrong? I mean, like, the whole, everything about it was so tone deaf. And I think that's what happens in large corporations too, right? Like, safety is, you always revert to safety, right? That is like, and I think one of the failures in leadership you see all the time is the safest way to never get in trouble, whether it's greenlighting a show or greenlighting a story or whatever, is to not make a decision, right? And that, I think people, paralysis is easier than risk.
Well, the more people you have running a corporation, the longer the paralysis goes before the decision happens, because you got to get everybody.
Right.
Oh, we got to call Bob. Well, Bob's skiing in Colorado. He's not off the mountain yet. And you're 3 hours past.
Right. But then also the thing, what will Bob think? What will Bob say? And usually people don't get it right. Right. They usually don't actually accurately know what someone's going to say. And like, I remember there were all these, on a much smaller level at Hollywood Reporter and Billboard, like, these crazy things would come back to me, like, we heard you hate the color pink and no one should ever wear pink. I'm like, I've never said that in my life. So I think the way that these things get communicated through organizations can have, this was a small organization, can have, this sort of chilling effect on everything. Right. So then I'm sure you have all these people on ESPN now who are like, oh my God, I shouldn't even comment on that player's hair, because what if it's racially insensitive, and I just want to say that I like his hair today, and like
freezing.
And so then it creates this like lack of expression from the people on air, and that's exactly what you want, right? You want like expressive people to sort of get you excited and thinking about the game. And I think this whole notion also that sports are just sports. I mean, it's like
that can't fly anymore.
Nothing is what it is anymore. Hollywood is not about Hollywood, right?
Right.
And
especially this month.
No, oh my God.
Jesus. Quick break to talk about Bluehost, a top-rated website provider powering over 2 million websites for bloggers or small business owners. Bluehost has everything you need to build, host, and manage the personal or small business website you've always wanted. Design your website your way without being limited by templates. Simple enough for beginners, powerful enough for even the most advanced users. Fully customized templates, third-party app support, a 99.9% uptime guarantee, maximum security, including malware monitoring and protection, and automatic secure WordPress installs. Not to mention Bluehost 24/7 tech support, online resources, expert services. No wonder it's been the top recommended WordPress host on WordPress.org since 2005. Bluehost makes hosting your website stress-free. So now you can get back to what matters most, reading the Hollywood Reporter. And now our listeners save 50% when you sign up at bluehost.com/Bill Simmons. Once again, that is bluehost.com/Bill Simmons. Back to Janice. Yeah, with Jan. Last Jan question.
Yeah, you can ask me more Jan questions. I don't care.
You found out there was a book coming. What was your reaction?
Well, so I know Joe Hagan a little bit, and he is a vicious is not the right word, but he is an uncorruptible reporter. Like
honest and unmerciful, like Lester Bangs in Almost Famous. Second Almost Famous
yes,
reference.
I mean, he is well done. He is. And I remember one of the last stories he did before he started working on this book was a story I think he did for New York Magazine about NBC when they had fired Ann Curry, and it was like, it was so like raw and like.
I remember that story.
It was so good.
That was rough.
It was rough.
Made me feel bad for Ann Curry. Made me feel bad for everybody.
Right. But it made you feel that Joe Hagan was a really good reporter.
Yeah, he is.
Right? And
that's why it was good.
Yeah. And so Joe, this is, to me, it was like a classic Jan thing. Like Jan is probably flattered by Joe's attention. They're neighbors. They live, I mean, the awkwardness of.
But then they had the falling out, which we're not sure if it was orchestrated or not to sell the book. I don't
think it worked, but I don't think it was orchestrated. Like Jan, like I knew the second I knew Joe Hagan was doing Jan's book,
you were like, I'm like making popcorn.
Yeah, totally. Like this is gonna end badly, but like this is this will be great for the book. It'll be good. And like Joe just killed it. He got like everybody to talk. Phenomenal reporting. And I think it's sort of the, I think David Geffen said about biographies, and because he said like, once you give it up to someone, like, you have to accept the consequences.
Yeah.
But I do believe, and I said this to Joe the other day, I said, now that the book's been so well received, Jan will come around to liking it and liking you back again. Like he'll want to own that part.
Well, between that and the doc, he's going to have this moment of re-relevancy.
Well, and I think you see
that
this
I think will help him.
You see this with a lot of guys, largely guys in their 70s in Hollywood. Like they're trying to set their legacy, right? And like Steven Spielberg had that HBO documentary. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, documentary. That was a documentary. Yeah. Okay.
But that's the same thing. Like, okay, who's going to tell my story? And it's, the Hamilton line, right? Like, who lives, who dies, who tells your story? And so he is like, these guys want that and they need that, right? Or else like, it's your last grasp of greatness. And I think that if you're Jan, this is, what you don't want your legacy to be. Like, I whiffed on selling Us Weekly for $750 million to Hearst. I was engulfed by a UVA rape story that was fake. And so like legacy setting.
The problem is giving up the action though. Because I think, and you see this in good ways and bad ways, because I look at somebody like Jan, you look at like Lorne Michaels.
Right.
You look at like Graydon, who was just on my podcast a couple weeks ago. Like you give up that Vanity Fair editor-in-chief job, you're not just giving up the job, you're giving up this power that you have. You're giving up, you run the Oscars party and all these things. And for a lot of people, they don't want to give up the action. I'm sure Jan was like, if I sell this for 700 million, now what do I do?
Well, of course,
just skiing?
I jumped to the end of the book. And so I read that part. And
I can't do that.
Yeah. And that's exactly what he says. I mean, he said, and for Jan, like, Jan is a little bit like Donald Trump in that he's never wrong, ever. And he said this quote in the book that was really revealing, where he said, there's a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda, but it is what it is, right? And I have to live with what that decision was. And that's a difference between, retiring with, I guess it would have been after the Disney investment.
It's really hard to. Athletes are in the same boat. Right. They never know when it's time for them to wrap it up. You know? I'm sure Michael Jordan, in retrospect, probably wished he'd gone out in '98.
Right. But no one ever.
You didn't get that reference.
I kind of got it.
He made the shot in the finals.
Yes.
But then he came back and played for the Wizards.
Right. Well, he also did baseball.
And he did that too. Yeah, he did a lot of. Michael Jordan did a lot of things. This is good. See, you got your sports.
I'm making it right.
This is good.
Yeah. Okay. But I think knowing when to exit, and because it's one of these sad realizations. Like nobody exits gracefully at the end, right? It's like who really gets to exit gracefully?
I think Trump has a chance. I still have hope. I think he's 74, 75. I think he's going to start hitting his stride.
Yeah, like year 7.
The older he gets, I think he's going to get better.
Wiser.
I know it doesn't make sense, but that's how I feel. He's going to be great.
It's a good prediction.
Couple years, got to get his feet wet in that job. He'll be good. The right people around him.
Well, I think that you see with, I mean, everything today's a conversation about men and women, but I think men cannot like that power is so much of your identity as a male, right?
Yeah.
And, the ability to shit on people who don't have power is part of the identity. And, the ability of people, it's like
Well, it's also how you talk about people like over 65.
Right.
They just grow up a certain way. And
Right.
at some point, people just become who they are.
Right.
And the way
Right.
that they were used to doing things,
right.
they don't understand that. No. Things are
Right.
a little different now.
Right.
They just
right.
don't see it.
They don't see it. And I think there's certain, I think, it was interesting when, you saw that with Donna Karen with her stupid comments she made after the Harvey Weinstein scandal came out about, well, how are the women dressed? And the
Right.
right.
That's like a classic old person comment.
Totally. And
somebody would say that at the Thanksgiving table, like
Right.
your 78-year-old
Right.
aunt would
Right.
make that comment.
Well, in fact, as a relative who is in her 70s, one of the things that she replied when an email was sent around to different family members about Weinstein, like the response was, how desperate would these women have to be for attention? I mean, and so it's okay. So we're never going to reach consensus on this particular issue. But, that's why you see, I thought it was no coincidence that you had the two people who broke the story at the New York Times were two women, right? And who were, I think, like early 40s or late 30s.
Yeah.
And then the other person at the New Yorker is Ronan Barrow, who is, he's like an annoying child prodigy who's like, 28 or whatever, but went to Yale Law School, but he,
Personal experience.
but yeah, I mean, this is someone who,
family.
who has been trying to right that wrong in various ways. And this is one way to right that wrong, is to go after this story. And it's one reason why actresses trusted him, right? Because he wrote about Woody Allen and his sister in a way that they related to. Anyway, so that, these stories aren't getting broken, I mean, if you're...
Well, now it's like every day you feel
Every
like
day.
there's...
we
don't have to name the list of 30 people that we've all kind of thought, I wonder if that person's next,
yeah,
but
kind of a perv.
it's it's starting to come,
Right.
Today as we're taping this, like Brent Ratner had
Right. I mean,
6 people come out,
yeah,
and it's wasn't...
Did anyone fall out of their chair this
No,
morning?
I wasn't like keeling over in disbelief.
No, but then there are other ones, like the NPR guy, Michael Orestes.
Right, those
I'm like, oh my God, it's engulfed NPR now. Like,
right.
right. And
it's not going to stop. It hasn't even gone into sports yet. It hasn't, it's going to go in all these different industries.
Silicon Valley, right?
Silicon Valley and sports, I think, are the two next things.
Like really bad, right?
Wait, go back to 2009. So you
Yes.
leave Us Weekly you're leaving like the 1927 Yankees, basically.
Yeah. So so it was one of these, like,
you're leaving Friends in year 6.
Totally. So every contract with Jan was always like this agonizing process. And so it was, I think that you kind of have to know when to leave, right? I just felt like, I would say the last contract I did was probably, I knew why I was doing it. I just it was just going to be one more, and then I was going to be out. Like,
do you think like for CEOs and editor-in-chief, stuff like that, like 7 years is a good length? I kind of feel like it is.
Yeah, I feel like that's a magic number, right?
At some point, you're just going to be repeating the same ideas you already had, and there's going to be a freshness that just kind of goes.
Right, there is, and I think every organization benefits from like a reset, right? Well, sometimes they don't benefit. Sometimes they actually get worse. But most organizations could, an event, but they will right size themselves usually in some way down the road. But I think that
Bob Iger said that in the Disney book, because he was talking about how Eisner had basically stayed too long, and he's like, the thing I learned is CEO has, and he was very candid about that. CEO should move. CEO shouldn't be there too long. And now he's still there. He said all of it. It's like he stayed 5 years longer than he said he was going to stay, which is hilarious.
It's hard to give up the seat.
Yeah, it's hard.
I mean,
you're the man.
And like, he became not just the man, like, but the man, right? I mean, it's like, he's done an incredible job. So then the second I sort of reluctantly, and that doesn't mean I wasn't going to do a good job or I wasn't enthusiastic about it, but I did the last contract, and it paid ridiculously well, and we talked about the economics of Us Weekly, so phenomenally profitable.
But you have 2 small kids.
And I'm sort of like, okay, I'll do this again. And actually, it was so funny. One of the jobs that I had been offered at that time before that contract, I renewed that contract, was to work at Yahoo, which that was a dodge.
Oh,
I'm like,
jeez.
Can you imagine? So I did it, and then, Jan and I, and oh my God. So remember, everything, like, the world is flush with cash. It's 2007. Jan takes out a $300 million loan to buy back his 50% stake of Us Weekly from Disney. And this was a deal that had gone back to Michael Eisner when Michael Eisner had given him money to keep it alive. And
so this was almost like all the ego of it really bothered him that he had sold half of it.
Totally. And so for Jan, I'm sure he's thinking, all I'm doing is giving away 50% of my profits. That's all. Like, it's driving me insane. And so, I think I think Disney had invested $20 million in Us Weekly and got back $300 million. Wow. I mean, so, a great return. And
plus all the profit year by year that owning it.
Totally. Right.
That's one of the better deals.
I mean, maybe the last time anyone made money in a print publication. Right. So, so then 2007, he's happy, delighted. Like, I get signed to this great contract for the last 2 years, and then 2008, boom, and the market collapses, and and there goes everything, right? There goes his $750 million offer from Hearst to buy Us Weekly. Every advertiser is paralyzed with fear. There's not enough discretionary income to buy newsstand publications, and that began his, this, which has led to today, this excruciating process of trying to get out from underwater of what he owed. It's like owning a house where the mortgage exceeds the value of the home. That's what he has been, contending with for the past decade at this point. So anyway, it was, and I talked a lot about it with people at the time when I was leaving, that I feel like the screw is turning. This whole like, bacchanal of celebrity is done. Like, it's just there's
you saw it coming. Yeah. And you didn't even really know about Instagram and all the things that were going to finish it.
Starting to happen. I could just feel like, I always use this analogy, like, you can only go to the dessert buffet so many times. Like, and there was sort of like, it was, and some of it was like, I feel like there were times I marginally cared about any of this stuff at all, even when I was there. And it was getting harder to care about, Jessica Simpson.
25 things you didn't know about Nick Lachey?
Yeah. It was good. And then that's also where you saw, and I'm sure your wife maybe has noticed some of this, like these reality stars where you're like, who? Yeah. What? Like, who cares?
For me, the death of Us Weekly in my house was Teen Mom, which was my wife's least favorite cultural thing that's happened in the last 15 years. She hates Teen Mom more than anything.
There's just so much ickiness around everything about that.
I'm an idiot who had a kid too soon. Here's my reality show.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I hate Teen Mom so much.
But they're not glamorizing teen pregnancies. Oh no,
not at all. We're not glamorizing at all. But you're a celebrity now. What the hell is that?
Right, and we're paying you $500 an episode to exploit your life.
So much.
I mean, is that still on air?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, see, they even have like London Teen Mom. They moved to other countries to find teen moms with accents. So stupid.
Oh my God. No, it's grotesque.
So you took a couple years off, then you went to Hollywood Reporter.
Yeah. So there was a guy who, so my husband and I had this plan. We lived in Manhattan. We lived on Lafayette Street, and we had these two small kids, and it's, I just found it increasingly difficult to live in Manhattan, as did my husband. And so we're like, okay, let's move. We can just go anywhere we want. So we decided we were going to move to Marin County, outside of San Francisco. Even like bid on a house, and because because the real estate downturn lasted like 2 seconds in certain markets, we got outbid on the house. But right around when we were getting outbid on the house, I get this call from Richard Beckman, who had worked at Condé Nast and had been hired as the CEO of this company, and they had acquired these, dumpy little assets. And so Richard Beckman, and there was, since we all learned everything important in Page Six, Richard Beckman had seen in Page Six that my apartment had sold and I was moving to, and the Page Six was wrong, and said I was moving to Los Angeles and not to San Francisco. So, and so then Richard Beckman, there was a day where Richard Beckman's frantically trying to find me and talk to me, and and he called. So we talk on the phone, and he said, "Do you want to talk about the Hollywood Reporter?" I said, "No, that doesn't mean like what is it? It's like nothing. I've never even looked at it in my life. It's a bunch of it's just one of those.
It's like poor man's Variety, basically.
Which is saying
and Variety was
lot.
Like
right. I mean,
studios and executives got Variety, and that was it.
And so then he said, "No, trust me, let's meet." And so I met him at the Bowery Hotel. at the restaurant there, and we had breakfast, and he just said, so, and he's, you can we jokingly sometimes call him Barnum, Bailey, and Beckman. He's like a total showman, right?
Yeah.
And British accent, and he's like, you can do, you'd be brilliant. You could do anything you want, and I want it to be, a hybrid of The Economist and. Wait, The Economist and
The Economist.
Yeah, I know. He kind of lost me there. But The Economist and something else, I can't remember. But he had this whole vision, but basically it was clear I could do anything I wanted, and that he said all I want to do is I want to get rid of this. It was a daily paper then, and
I didn't remember that.
Yeah, nobody.
That's how little I read it.
Yeah, it didn't matter to you, and it was a daily trade paper, and so he wanted to redo the website and redo the publication.
And the website was nothing.
I mean, it had it had 800,000 visitors a month. It couldn't even be registered on ComScore, which is what everyone. Yeah, it was sad, capital S. So then anyway, I thought about it, and he had this idea of doing a weekly magazine, wanting to attract luxury advertisers. And so, so it was this long process. So I would say 4 months later, and I had to think about it. I had to think what I would do. I had to think if we would actually move to Los Angeles, because, the Los Angeles my husband knew was like Paris Hilton land. I remember I had just come from Us Weekly. It was like the most repulsive, You didn't
know it was about to become the coolest city in America.
Exactly, right? Yeah. But it was at that point, especially as from East Coast bias, like people think LA is filled with like illiterates and degenerates and I mean the worst part of America. So anyway, push comes to shove, and we all decide I will do this, and so we move out here, and then it just happened really quickly. It was like the craziest. I had to learn, I knew LA, but I had to really learn LA. I had to learn this crazy movie industry and TV industry. And the first person I hire is Kim Masters. We never even meet. A mutual friend vouches for me. I vouched for her. I hired her over the phone, and then off we went, and I moved out here.
I knew you knew what you were doing when you hired Tim Goodman.
Oh, Tim Goodman.
Yeah, I was like, they're actually, this could be a real thing, this magazine.
Tim Goodman had he'll tell this story where I call him he was recommended by a bunch of people. He has no idea who I am. And he's so rude to me when I call. And I'm like, okay, so do you want to think about it? And he wasn't rude really, but he just didn't, he was confused. Yeah. And I said, do you want to think about it? He's like, okay. And then he calls me back 30 minutes later. He's like, oh, okay, let's talk. And he got super excited. And well,
I remember when I heard you took over, and I didn't really know what a Hollywood Reporter was. I was like, so is it going to be
celebrity?
Yeah, celebrity pictures, and are they going to compete with Us Weekly?
Right, that would be the logical conclusion.
Yeah, I didn't expect that journalism. Basically everything you did, I did not expect.
Right. And I think that's one of the things people very much define people. We're all limited in how we judge people, right? You define people by the last thing they did, right?
And that's it.
Yeah. And so you could end up, maybe one day you're a cancer researcher, but we would never think that because
I'm not a nice enough person to do that. I'm an only child.
But people. So
I get you. I get you.
Yeah. So I
you
think
just never know.
You never know. And so it was. Oh my God! It was like this. And you really realize it's a real test of how thick-skinned you are as a human being, right? Everyone was for starters, this was about the 200th relaunch of the Hollywood Reporter, right? And so the 199 times before it sucked, and so why would the 200th time be any better? And so so much negative press, and remember this was Nikki Fink era in Hollywood, and so
it seemed like Hollywood coverage was just drifting toward anonymous message board posts and Nikki Fink and that kind of world.
And that was sort of one of the conceits I had about reconceiving the Hollywood Reporter was Hollywood has become so, and I feel like Hollywood didn't know this, and I think as an outsider I could see it, that Hollywood had become so big in the outside world that this, and it wasn't just celebrities, it was moving beyond celebrities. It was the stories of the stories, and I thought of the few examples that were pretty obvious that then were remember when the Conan Zucker Jay Leno story was happening, and that had this basically behind the scenes negotiation story became
but the thing is though, that was there for a while because the Bill Carter books were the blueprint for, hey, this could be a magazine that works. Vanity Fair would do it every once in a while.
Right.
But yeah, I was always fascinated by all
the
that
best
stuff.
stories were about the stories behind the stories here, right? And then also, Entourage, of course, like we sort of peeled off some of
But even like how Miramax became, removing all the current harvest stuff aside, just like that whole indie world and how the movie industry was changing. Nobody was really capturing it week to week.
No, and also, and I think as an East Coast guy, you understand this too. Like there was sort of this attraction repulsion to Hollywood also, right? That like there's not a media person alive who doesn't kind of wish they had like an in Hollywood, who kind of didn't wish they, could write on a show or, have a friend who was a director. And so there was definitely all this intrigue around it, but also the feeling that, I always use this analogy back then, like how come the entire world knows, well, not the entire world, but so many of the media know who like Lloyd Blankfein is at Goldman Sachs, right? And like Wall Street had broke through, and people who might not have a penny invested in the stock market, but nobody, the outside world couldn't tell you who the studio chiefs were. They couldn't tell you who are the people who are delivering the content that occupies really almost all of your time outside of the time you might spend on a job or with your family. And so that was one of the, that was sort of the main premise of it was how do you make Hollywood its best version of itself to the rest of the world, and how do you show the world what Hollywood actually is and tell those stories? So that was really a base. Like,
and how do you be authentic?
Right.
I think that was the biggest reason the magazine succeeded was it felt like the conversations people are actually having.
Right. How are you on it? And I think that was like that was like an Us Weekly thing too. Like how are you just on the conversation and not on it or following it, but like leading it. Right.
But you did one other thing though.
What?
You've captured rich person culture.
Right.
Well, you're not the editor anymore, but you'd be like, the 30 best places celebrities go on for Christmas and the 4 hottest lunch spots right now in Hollywood and all that stuff and the Hamptons and Malibu, all these places. Right. Well, and you were always there. Here's what's happening in these spots.
And the lifestyle. So it's, it's a one industry town, even though, people who work in aerospace would tell you that's not the case, but it's a one industry town, that were social and work all meld into one. Right.
Yeah.
And I think unlike, I just moved from New York where there was all this shaming over conspicuous consumption, right? That you like, oh my God, like if you go shopping at Saks, which of course is having huge financial problems today, but if you go shopping at Saks, like, can you put it in a plain brown paper bag? I don't want to be seen carrying this down the street. Like this whole, like trying to underplay wealth. In LA, the exact opposite. Who cares? Like drive your yellow Maserati. Like,
let's open another Soho house.
Completely, and no one has any self-consciousness about overconsumption or luxury here. And that was a huge opportunity here, right?
And really fun to read about.
It's hilarious. And I think there was a tonal thing that I was very self-conscious of. So you could read those stories both as, you could read the stories as informative, and I can't tell you the number of executives who'd be like, "Oh my God, those $700 shoes! I bought 6 pairs of them. Thanks for showing them." So, or I upgraded my plane after you did the private plane story. But you could also read it as entertainment, right? And I think so. It was always there's this very deliberate, non-elitist tone about how those stories were done, right? And I think when you look at women's magazines historically, part of the reason they've struggled and had to recalibrate their tone is that it was always like, you better be, you better like not wear coral lipstick, or you should be, your hem has to be at your knee this season, or mid-length or whatever. And I think that to be able to present the lifestyle of LA as its entertainment in itself, without ever making fun of it, ever making fun of anyone, all those stories definitely walked the line.
Good journalism culture. And then the third piece, lists. Good lists.
Oh my God.
30 hottest under 40 executives. And I mean, because everyone is going to click on those and read those. Oh, did my boss make the list? The 40 best assistants.
No, you don't even understand the fear.
The lobbying. The amount of lobbying, I can't even imagine.
Oh, I mean, like people's jobs truly depended on their boss appearing on a list, and like
agents. That was another good one.
Oh my God.
The 75 best agents.
I mean, and
everyone's losing their minds.
Oh my God.
I was only 5th.
Oh my God. And if, let's see, like if CAA has 10 agents on the list, then, WB, now Endeavor, has to have the same number, if not more. And
Janice is just in bed with Endeavor. That's the reason they had so many.
Completely. Everything
She's
is
against
being
us.
gamed, right?
Yeah.
And, but I mean, true, I mean, crises and meltdowns over lists. And it's
fantastic. It's so smart. It's just so good.
It's so funny, but I think
because you wanted everyone in Hollywood to lock into the magazine and care about what's in it every week. What's better than doing that?
Well, I remember probably one of the breakthrough covers we did early on. Maybe it was might have been like the 3rd or 4th cover we did. Was in 2010, and it was Glee. It was about Glee when Glee was like white hot.
Yeah.
And so, one of the stories we did, and it was. No, it wasn't Lacey Rose. Lacey Rose hadn't started yet, but this is why Lacey Rose started.
Good writer. Another good hire.
Amazing. But we did a story about the business of Glee, how Glee was becoming one of these shows where you could have a concert tour and, a Broadway, I don't know if they have a touring show and, all these ancillary products that made it just much more than this, show that you could sell internationally. And so on the cover, we put Ryan Murphy, the creator of Glee, the stars at the time, including Lea Michele. But this was sort of like this breakthrough moment for Hollywood. We put on Dana Walden and
the executive,
Newman, the executives, and they were styled.
I'm sure they didn't want to do that at all and take credit and be on the cover. Must have been tough to convince them.
No exec ever wanted that.
No, I can't. I want the cast to get the credit. Yeah, I want Ryan to take front and center.
But that was sort of like, I think that's where suddenly this thing clicked in people's minds in town, where they were like, wait, I am the star. I'm not just an executive. I can get my credit and I can get my due, and I can also be photographed looking as good as Charlize Theron. I'm going, hot damn, this is like my thing. And, and I think that the access to talent and access to the industry comes through. I think this whole misconception that in the outside world that the celebrities have power in town, that they're the ones who control everything. They don't, right? They're just like
if we didn't learn that over the last 4 weeks,
right? I mean, and so they're just the schmucks trying to get a job. And so the puppet strings are being pulled by these behind the scenes executives. And so the amount that we could work with executives to get things, the stories we want, to get information, and for them to feel like we were going to treat it respectfully and intelligently, and, they could trust us, that became really a huge part of the
But
engine.
you kept doing real journalism, which made it so it didn't seem like you were in the bag for people.
That was an important thing. Like we had to just stick it to Hollywood a lot, right? Because Hollywood deserves it, right?
Yeah.
And but unless you I think once people smell fear in you, right, you're dead. And there was a story that I think in the second issue we did of the print issue of the Hollywood Reporter, where we were launching the website at the same time, total chaos. Everyone's working 20 hours a day. Kim Masters had done this story about this movie, which I'm sure you recall, called Burlesque, that starred Cher and Christina Aguilera.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And so it was, not
on cable.
Not.
All copies have been destroyed.
Yeah, exactly. It has been erased. It has been disappeared. So that was a Sony movie, a Sony Pictures movie. Through this imprint, they had Screen Gems. And so Kim had this story about the debacle of the making of Burlesque. How the budget, it was over budget. The director was dating the executive at Screen Gems. There was fist fights and violence, and everyone hated each other. Tears. Christina Aguilera tears. It was one of these fun, classic Hollywood yarns.
Yeah.
Sony is losing it. Okay, so this is I'm the new person. Sony calls my boss, Richard Beckman, and says you need to kill the story. And so Richard Beckman, to his credit, he calls me. He's like, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, we're not going to kill it. And then they go to the publisher, threaten to pull all the ads, the typical trade stuff that had worked to the demise, that had it really eroded the trade business here in Los Angeles. And so we ended up standing our ground. I told the publicist at Sony at the time, I said, you will not be surprised by anything in here. I will walk you through the story. You will have a chance to respond, but it's not going away. And it ran, and it was, people ate it up. It was just like Hollywood candy, and that was it. But after that, every single moment, with the staff, and so much of the existing staff, they were so willing to kill things for people. I'm like, why are you killing them? What are you do for who? For whose benefit?
What do you get out of it?
And I said, if you're not, if you are the person, you need to be the first. You need to be the person they respect, but also fear that they need to return your call. And if they think you're movable, if they think you are, you can be played, like, that's it. That doesn't make them like you more. That doesn't make them give you things more. And this whole idea that somehow you get things more if you play nice with them, it's not true. It's not how it works. It's like, that's not how life works. They have to fear and respect you, right? So that was a big cultural shift. And and it made me think, and Kim Masters and I were texting about this yesterday. I think before we relaunched this magazine, there was a story we did on Steve McPherson at ABC, and he ran ABC.
I know who Steve is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So he ran the network then, and he suddenly was gone from ABC.
Suddenly.
And Kim Masters did a story about him having been investigated for sexual harassment leading up to his sudden resignation.
Yes.
And I mean, I think I was probably 3 weeks into the job at that point.
That's a story that might have been killed 5 years before, right?
5 minutes before.
We'll do you a favor.
Yeah.
You'll get the Desperate Housewives next week on next week's cover.
And the staff there was the traditional, older staff there was like, oh my God, you can't say that. Don't do that. Like, why would you do that? Like, they were like panicked that we were going to do this story. And we got, the Marty Singer letter, Marty Singer, who, also sent out the Brett Ratner letters today, like, you'll get sued, yada, da, 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 da. And then and so Kim and I were like, let's just do it. It was true. And so we did. And that's what, and if this probably segues a little into Harvey Weinstein, like some people were outraged. Like, why would you ruin this man's career? Why would you say this? Like, it's not fair. You don't need to talk about these things. And I think that was a real litmus test to sort of the boundaries of conversation people could handle. It didn't mean that we didn't do those stories again, but it was sort of eye-opening to me that, there are things you talk about here and there are things you don't talk about. And I think we've seen that there are lots of things we don't talk about right now.
We're taking one more break to talk about DraftKings. Week 9, football season in full swing. Begs the question, how is your fantasy football team doing? Maybe you drafted a dud in the 4th round. Maybe your 1st round pick is on the shelf with a bum knee. Maybe you're me. You have Dalvin Cook. You paid $45 for him. Now he's not playing this season. The good news, it's not too late to forget the injuries and get back in the winning column with DraftKings. Remember, DraftKings is the destination for 1 week fantasy football. No season-long commitments. Pick a contest. Draft a fake team of real players. Be their fake GM. Follow that fake team live. You might win some real money. Do a public contest or a private contest with friends. Do a 50-50 contest where half the teams win cash. Or be like me and do a single entry league. I enjoy those. I won $200 last week. Go to DraftKings.com and use the code Simmons to play for free with your first deposit for your share of over $1 million in total prizes this Sunday. DraftKings, the game inside the game, minimum $5 deposit for this weekend. All kinds of good stuff happening. DraftKings.com, code Simmons. Eligibility restrictions may apply. See DraftKings.com for details. And since we're here, let's talk about a little gambling. Let's keep going. From a gambling standpoint, we're going to remember the 2010s as the decade when live betting took off. Where you're betting is just as important as who you're betting on. Here's an idea. Go to mybookie.ag. They've been in this business for years. Their reputation is rock solid. They do 50% cash bonuses. So off the bat, you're making money for doing nothing. They have the fastest payouts. Seriously, just 2 business days. They have in-game live betting, the most rewarding player picks in the business, and an all-new mobile site that makes wagering on the go a breeze. In-game live betting. Oh, yeah. Imagine doing that for Game 5 of the World Series. Lay down some cash. Try to win big today. Join now. MyBookie will match your deposit with up to a 50% bonus. Just visit mybookie.ag. Use the promo code Bill Simmons to activate the offer. You play, you win, you get paid. Back to Janice. You come in that decade and all the streaming stuff's happening too.
Right.
The industry itself is getting much more interesting.
Yes, I mean it's in
TV's in complete chaos. Right? Amazon, all these big giant internet things are becoming now media brands.
Right.
They're supplanting the traditional old brands.
Right.
Everyone's jockeying for PR, all that stuff. And now on top of it, we have the whole industry basically crumbling from sexual assault stuff.
Right. I mean,
and nobody knows when it's going to end. Nobody knows who's next.
Right.
By the way, this is not why I invited you to come on.
Oh, well,
I was actually, I'd always wanted to have you on, and Tommy and I had been talking about who could, and I was like, I always want to have Janice Mint on. You think she'd come on?
Thank you.
And then you were ready.
Here I am.
I do feel like we have to talk about it for 5 minutes. I don't want to talk about it for 30. But
yeah, that's fine.
You talked about it on Bill Maher. I thought you were really good about
Thank
it.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, it is, for a magazine like Hollywood Reporter, this could be the next 2 years of the magazine.
Well, but also, what does it mean? Like, what is, like, I've thought about this. What does it mean? How does Hollywood move on? Like, so if you're selling this image to the world, like Hollywood is the biggest export of America, right? And
yeah.
So this image you're selling to the world, like, what is it? And how do you do things? How do you have an awards show? You have the Hollywood Film Awards coming up this weekend, then followed by, Directors Guild and Golden Globes, Oscars. Like, what do you joke about? Like, how do you, like, and who's going to show up? I know that some executives in town, people are pulling back from doing interviews and press because they don't want to get asked about it. They don't want to. And I think, it's hard to be, I think, and you don't want to be the male piñata who sticks out your neck. And then, but you know what? Do you remember in 2002 when you said this in an interview? Like, you're disgusting too. And I think so. There's so many forces that are at work here that put Hollywood in like an unbelievably awkward position. And James Corden is hosting the Hollywood Film Awards on Sunday, and he got killed a few weeks ago for joking in an inappropriate way. I mean,
his monologue, right?
Yeah, and what is that? And what is
too soon?
Too soon. What does that really mean? And I think I think we see this all the time. There is a fungible set of ethics here in Hollywood, or judgment, right? And that at one point you can do this, but at another point you can't do that. And and Seth MacFarlane can say in his Oscar monologue, we saw your boobs, and make the Harvey Weinstein joke, and life goes on, and But James Corden who's supposed to be a comedian, can't stand up and make jokes.
There's a show on Hulu called Different People where they've made like 5 or 6 different Kevin Spacey jokes over the course of the show. They've snuck them in.
Wow.
And nobody ever put 2 and 2 together, but
right.
I read some blog post about it yesterday. It was like all the times this show has snuck in a Kevin Spacey joke.
Well, I saw in the LA Times story today about Brett Ratner, Tina Fey at our women's breakfast. We do
right.
This, yes. I mean,
at your breakfast.
Yes. And I believe Brett Ratner was sitting there, which is, kind of gross to think about now, but Brett Ratner sitting there at our breakfast for the 100 most powerful women in Hollywood. And Tina Fey makes the joke. Brett Ratner's here because he thought it was the 100 women you could eat breakfast off of. Breakfast.
Right.
I mean,
it's,
but
everybody laughs and moves on.
Yeah. And that's sort of that weird cultural thing that's gone on here, right? Where you kind of laugh and, you're like, ooh, that guy's a perv. Or like you laugh about someone being like on drugs or a weirdo. And then like, okay, like life goes on. But, my husband had worked at the Horace Mann School in New York.
Yeah.
Which
had a big scandal.
Oh my God. Like really just the most upsetting, decades long sexual abuse of boys.
Yeah.
And it really was like a pedophile ring. And one of those teachers was this guy, Joseph Samari, who was the music teacher there. And when my husband was teaching there, Joseph Samari was, close to retirement. But like, I remember my husband joking about him being a pervert, like, oh, no boy should ever, no one should ever be alone with Joseph Samari. And I'm like, oh my God. So then Joseph Samari actually, is named as one of like really the most incredibly troubling, disgusting assailants in all of this. And you think like, wow, nobody for like 25 years, like put it all together and made it happen. Right. And,
I'm from that generation.
Right.
And I went to prep school, we had the 2 teachers that you knew, like, don't go, if you go camping, don't go, stay away.
Yeah.
But we all kind of looked out for each other, but we would never thought to have tattled.
Right.
But it was like, yeah, stay away from that guy.
Yes.
And it was the same thing with like, I had friends who were altar boys and stuff. And it was like, don't go to that priest's house. Like, don't drink wine with him.
Right.
But everybody kind of looked out for each other. But now it's like, it seems insane that that's how we acted.
It's insane. But also, I think like, think about how we treat like Colin Kaepernick, right? And it's like, like, and it's when did NFL games become so aligned with American patriotism, right? And this whole like co-opting by the biggest commercial enterprise that one can imagine, like suddenly becoming like the fourth wing of the government, right? And that somehow like this, this ability to, whether you agree with Colin Kaepernick or not, like the ability to freely express like something very real,
to peacefully protest something that he was trying to make a point
and
about.
I think today, if you don't understand that like the Black American experience has maybe not fully been resolved, then like it's so weird. But the pressure and the desire to not have that conversation, and it's not just football, it's everything, is so overwhelming, right? And
well, it seems there's a weird overlap, because in both instances you have people trying to pretend that they know why Kaepernick's making the decision he's making,
right?
And they're not walking in his shoes.
Well,
that's like when we get into trouble, and it's the same thing with this Weinstein thing, where we like, especially with older people. Well, why are they going up to his room?
Right.
It's like, wait a second. That's not the question.
Exactly.
That's not part of this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing Colin Kaepernick probably still wishes he were playing football. Like, I'm guessing
Also, who is some white dude in Alabama to be like, oh, Kaepernick should shut up. Like, he doesn't, what does he know? Like, it's like, this is how the dude feels.
Right.
He's speaking out. Like, at least think about why he's doing it.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that, you see this with the Weinstein stuff and like with Kaepernick, like that, I think that we are totally unresolved about how, like, where we really view the pecking order of society. Right. And that, like, say whatever we say we think we are, that, at one point, in the Constitutional Convention, we said African Americans are 3/5 of a white person, right? And then, but so we'll have a civil war, which General Kelly says could have been solved through compromise the other day.
Ta-Nehisi Coates skewered that.
Oh
one.
my God,
that was great.
It's crazy. So then, and then you have but it takes 100 years to actually legislate integration of schools, right? And so it's like and somehow this thing that people believe that. And then it takes Black Lives Matter. It takes it takes video. It takes people with cameras and phones to start showing video of largely Black men getting killed by police who are innocent. Like, for this to actually become a conversation again. I think you and I.
Well, when Obama got elected, it was like, oh, we're good.
We're done.
Yeah,
all good. Like, let's
our
move
racial
it
issues
along.
are fine.
Totally. And I think it's so there are these periodic convulsions we need to sort of rethink and reset of what is actually going on here. And
but this is the concept of an older male executive using that power to basically try to get laid or whatever the hell they're trying to do.
Right.
This has been something that's been going on since the dawn of whenever the first office was created.
Caveman was doing this way back, right?
I mean, especially the bigger the corporation. Right. I know that I worked at one that you would always hear stories about certain people and wow.
Yes.
Why was that woman transferred into that department?
Yep.
She had to.
Yep.
Why? Well, something happened.
Yep.
And then it's like, oh, okay.
Right. And so then, you're you. What are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to inquire about it? Are you supposed to push harder? Are you what are you going to do? You're going to go, is Bill Simmons going to go to the press and be like, there's this woman situation.
Yeah, this is weird.
Yeah.
Where'd she come from?
Yeah, I don't get it. And so it's, I think that I'm just blown away by the scope of it. Not that it happened, but I think what's stunning is this has all been going on, and we kind of knew, but not like this, right?
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, think about the casting couch was one of the most famous go-to.
Right.
I don't know what the right word is. What people thought happened in Hollywood.
Right. Right. And that
producers produce, they bring in girl. Oh, how'd that person?
Right.
I mean, there was the famous 90210 episode about it with Brenda Walsh. Roy Randall. She's trying to get the part. Did she sleep with Roy Randall or not? I mean, this casting couch is 90 years.
Yeah, it's
but then you see it's the casting couch is actually way worse.
It's way worse.
And I gotta say, I'm shocked by very little anymore, especially after Bill Cosby.
Right.
Bill Cosby was America's dad in the 80s. That one to me, after that, I was like, nothing's gonna shock me.
Right.
But these stories about Harvey Weinstein.
Oh my!
The guy's like a serial rapist.
Totally.
If all these allegations are true, he's a serial rapist.
I mean, let's
and
say
it's
just 10 of
you
them
knew
are
he
true.
was,
right.
Harvey, that's who he is.
Yep.
And this is 100 times worse than I ever could have imagined.
He's like the whole Catholic Church scandal in one human being.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the
running the same play for 25
God,
years of,
right?
hey,
Like-
got a script in my room. Come on up. Hold on. I'm going to take a shower. Like, and this, he was doing this for 25 years. Nobody knew.
Isn't that amazing? That like,
It's just like, I just so creeped out by the whole thing.
The sort of influence and power of the actresses who've come forward, like, you know what, you could have said something then, but what would have, I don't know what would have happened. Like, I mean,
and you read these stories like the Annabelle Ciora story, and it's like, I mean, I always thought she was a really good actress. And I was wondering, like, what happened to her?
Totally. Like, oh, that sucks for her.
Remember she showed up in The Sopranos?
Yes,
like, wow, I always
great.
liked her.
Like, oh, it's Annabelle Ciora.
I always assumed she had like kids and stopped acting or something.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, this story is, I don't know how it gets covered over the next couple of years or where it goes, but it certainly feels like the biggest Hollywood story of the last 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it doesn't die. And you know, when
I don't think it's going to die at all. I think it's like a snowball rolling down the hill.
I mean, you know, just like when I was on the car ride over here, I spoke to two people who had other stories about other people that I feel like are about to come out. And
yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, like it's everyone. It's like that nice guy, that nice executive you thought was like a really good guy.
But I mean, you talked about the fearlessness you had at Hollywood Reporter with printing stuff. It's hard to print stuff unless people go on the record. And I think what's changed the last 3 weeks is people are like, fuck it. I'm telling my story.
Yeah.
And
that's my NDA.
That's why, Screw my NDA is a new one. I didn't even know people could do that.
Right. Screw my NDA. And also like and then who's going to be the asshole? Like also how quickly these guys are like falling on the sword. Like Mark Halperin, I did it. Yep, I did it. Like, sorry, you know, and like nobody. It's not the whole like protracted fight, undermining of the woman. And you know, Brett Ratner was the only one today. You know, good old Marty Singer, and they're trying to protect. But it's like I don't know, but I do think this changes. Like let's remember, October I think was maybe the worst box office month in the history of Hollywood. Like it's everything is in free fall. So some of this is like fix it.
Stranger Things was so much more important than any movie that came out this month.
Can you name one movie?
In October?
Can you name one movie? Did you go to the movies? No, you did not.
100% not.
So so some of this is just how do you market Hollywood going forward, and so you fix it because it's the right thing to do, right? And Hollywood is motivated by public perception and business, right? So fix it because it's the right thing to do, but because that will also impact your image in the world, right?
Well, it's also that, I mean, the biggest immediate outcome is this is going to lead to so much more diversity in high positions.
Well,
I think that will happen pretty much immediately.
I think that, you know, the Amazon job, right? So Roy Price, the head of Amazon.
3 dudes get knocked out.
Yes.
They're not getting replaced by 3 dudes. I mean, I can promise you that.
Yeah. I mean, if they will interview, you know, like every last female on the planet to make sure they get that job, those jobs filled by females. And, you know, that's a nice knee jerk, right? And, but you know, think like the week before Hulu had their big like switcheroo of executives, like someone to Fox, someone to Sony, and it's all like white guys being recirculated. You know, there is this list going around Hollywood of top jobs where women were never contacted to be interviewed. Right.
It sounds like NFL head coaches. They had to create a rule for this, the Rooney rule. Yeah.
Yes.
You know your sports. I think you undersold yourself.
But, you know, but J.J. Abrams has tried to, you know, he's instituted sort of his own Rooney rule in the hiring of people for his productions.
Yeah.
Ryan Murphy has in terms of directing directors on his shows. So it does work, right? But then, you know, people just lose it. And I think it's, you know, it's all about, you know, you can't regulate. Like, this is a town of, you know, largely all liberals who are all for regulation in government, right? And the second you want to regulate this industry, it's, you know, like no way. And so it really is incumbent upon the people at top. And, you know, you look at the people at top, all men, right? And they report to boards that are all men. And, you know, I think of the 6 or 7 studios in town that oversee all the TV networks and the film units, those boards are 17%. There's only 17% female representation. And I think, you know, we have this way of congratulating ourselves when we hire a woman or put a woman in one of those jobs. And like, no one ever freaks out saying, well, why isn't it 50%? You know, why? Like, if women are the biggest consumers of your entertainment, and like, especially let's say in Amazon, where I'm guessing the person who buys Amazon Prime is a female head of household, because men would never get around to doing it. Right. And like that sort of more of this doesn't filter up that way. But I think there was this, a lot of people talk in town. I don't know if you remember when there was this director, Colin Trevorrow, who had a breakout movie at Sundance. And it was like this little indie film that cost nothing and made nothing. But Steven Spielberg saw it and he said these words. He said, he reminds me of a young version of myself. And so he hires Colin Trevorrow to be the director of Jurassic World, which is, let's say it's a $200 million budget movie that goes on to be this huge blockbuster. And at that same Sundance, I believe Ava DuVernay had a movie. And Ava DuVernay has, I think it was Selma, breakout hit, didn't make a ton of money, but did quite well, huge notoriety, was in the Oscar conversation. No one comes to Ava DuVernay with that same, because there was no one up at top saying Ava DuVernay reminds me of a young version of me, right? And so she's been really vocal, so smart about talking about how, so she's just had to make her own way, partner with Oprah, which helps on projects. And
that's going to change though. The more different types of people that get in power,
right?
I think they'll be able to identify people like Ava better. At least that would be my hope.
This person I was talking to yesterday used this great example. There were two movies this summer that had female protagonists. So Atomic Blonde and Wonder Woman. And the person was saying, Atomic Blonde, all these guys at the studios thought it was going to be huge. It's a female movie. And it's not a female movie. It's a movie with a female lead that dudes would have constructed, right?
Yes.
Totally. It's a dude movie. And Wonder Woman had Patty Jenkins as the director and had this authentic female story, and it did huge. And that's sort of the disconnect, right? That's going on where...
Charlize was on this podcast. She told a story about when she did Monster. And the executive that funded it was mad because he thought he was funding a movie about a hot serial killer. And they had to walk him off the ledge.
Right.
No, it's not a movie about a serial killer. It's not. There's not a sex appeal component to this. We have to go. I could have done this for another 2 hours. Well, this was fun though.
Thank you. This was fun.
Congrats on running strategy for stuff for the Guggenheims. Something good will happen. I'm excited to see what your next giant thing is. You have a giant thing soon.
Probably. We'll see.
Yeah, I would guess. I'm betting on you.
You're very nice. I like my thing right now. So let's see.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks so much to Janice, and thanks to the Ringer NFL show, where Tate and Lombardi graciously allowed me to crash their party this week. You can subscribe to that, to the GM Street podcast on the Ringer NFL show. Thanks to SeatGeek. Don't forget, NBA fans, $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase on NBA tickets. Use promo code BSNBA. And don't forget about theringer.com. As usual, we're loaded with great stuff this week. If you have 20 minutes, I would read Brian Curtis's piece about the Padres and the John Birch Society from the 1980s. It is really kooky, and it's really well done. And we have a whole bunch of NBA stuff and Stranger Things, you name it. So check that out. That is also where my column goes on Fridays. And speaking of Friday, the BS podcast will be back on Friday with another edition. Until then.